Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where I want to dive into the current state of the NFC East. And I want to talk about the Washington Commanders because they have been one of the hottest storylines in the NFL over the past couple weeks due to the offensive explosion that we have seen. And it's really centered around, of course, number 2 overall pick from this past year in Jayden Daniels, who continues to excel, looking like he statistically is one of the most efficient quarterbacks, not just this year, but NFL history up to this point. He has an 82.1 completion percentage, which is the highest in NFL history through 4 games to begin a season. So, not looking like a rookie right now. And we continue to see step by step each week. He was 26 of 30 in this game, 233 yards, 1 touchdown, added 47 yards and another touchdown on the ground. Now, he did throw his first career interception. It was a deep post to Terry McLaurin that just was not a very good read as a whole. I didn't love the decision with multiple defenders in the area. He missed them high and behind. Not a great play. He got it over with. Everybody's eventually going to throw an interception. And it does sort of, it means at least it's not a completely boneheaded interception where the decision making was terrible. I mean, it was not a good read. But that being said, it wasn't extremely costly. It means that he's ramping up his level of aggression. And again, other than that, he had just 3 incompletions. So he has been excellent up to this point in the year. And we're seeing the methodical parts from him. I mean, he and the Washington offense put together a 93-yard touchdown drive. That was very impressive. We saw Daniels convert first downs on third through the air. And there's just a lot of positive momentum building with this Washington team. And I think that, it stems beyond just Jayden Daniels. As excellent as he's been, this running attack has been elite up to this point. In this game against Arizona, 37 carries for 216 yards. Now, it's not like it's exactly a great defense that they were facing. I mean, Washington in general, these past 2 games where it's been the Jayden Daniels renaissance, it's been against the Bengals and the Cardinals, where neither one of them have really proven that they can play great defense. But either way, you have the ground game firing. Brian Robinson is proving to be a big-time running back 1 for them. 21 carries for 101 yards in this game and a touchdown. You don't have Eckler, but their backup running back and Jeremy McNichols, who truthfully I hadn't heard of until this week. He was really impressive as well. 8 carries, 68 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That first touchdown run, the ability to, have the balance going down that left sideline, sort of, tiptoeing down the side. Thought it was really impressive. And, we're also finally getting to see Terry McLaurin, what he looks like with a true star quarterback. And, I don't want to prematurely throw Jayden Daniels in that star quarterback conversation. It seems like that's what he's very quickly becoming. And you look at Daniels now, Terry McLaurin was drafted in 2019. Jayden Daniels is the 11th quarterback to start a game for Washington during McLaurin's tenure there. So finally, he's getting some consistency. Last year, technically, he got 17 games out of Sam Howell, but, I don't know if that's necessarily something that he was asking for, even though I don't hate Howell as a quarterback. But Jayden Daniels is a different level. And, I think that you just have to look at the way this offense is clicking. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury, he had a ton to prove up to this point. I guess my only negative-ish note from what I've seen the past couple weeks is there's maybe at least something to note. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing because the results have 100% been there. There's very much a favoring of throwing to the right side, not throwing to the left side of the field where, in the past 2 games, 10 out of his 47 completions are past that left hash mark, which again is not anything, that's massively concerning. When it gets called a college offense, though, that is a pretty college thing. And I think that there's still plenty of time for Daniels to develop, looking at both sides of the field and such. But, again, this is all progression. We're 4 games into Jayden Daniels' career. We're just making notes of different things that at least stand out. And, Daniels himself would probably be the first to tell you he still has a ton of room to grow, and that's totally fine. The Commanders also benefit from the fact that they don't have all that difficult of a schedule moving forward, where it's not like there are that many perennial defenses that they're going to face, that a lot of these games are winnable, and I think that the Commanders have an excellent chance to actually pull off this division title run. Now, we'll see. I think part of it as well is I've had concerns with the defense. They played very well in this game against the Cardinals, which is important. I mean, they got pushed around a little bit up front by James Conner, who had 104 yards and a touchdown there, but they were excellent at playing against the pass. And, last week, Joe Burrow had a lot of success sort of airing it out and, picking on what is a pretty inexperienced secondary. But I think that even if there is an experience there, the front 7 is where the Commanders defense can really make a name for themselves. And I think they showed a lot of positive steps in this game. They were able to generate pressure on Kyler Murray. They got to him 4 times, and they didn't really ever let him scramble, which is obviously a huge part of Kyler's game. You have Dan Quinn sort of at the head of all this, who I don't think that he's been, I personally have never considered him one of the best defensive coordinators in the league, but he's been established and he's at the head of this thing. I'd be curious. I feel like that had to have been a game plan for them. Is contain, don't let Kyler scramble, force him into a pocket passer, which is when he starts to struggle a little bit more. And, Kyler had just 1 rushing attempt, which, unless there's some sort of injury that's going on behind closed doors there in Arizona, I think this is the first time Kyler has probably ever played a football game at quarterback where he's ran just 1 time. That, when he's not on the injury list. But I think that you saw a lot of production as well. Dorrance Armstrong, who was one of their big free agent signings. He's coming from Dallas with Dan Quinn. He had his best game as a Commander up to this point, recorded a season high in tackles with 5. He put a number of pressures on Kyler Murray, had 1.5 sacks. The full sack that he did get was at a pretty big moment right before the half. Cardinals going for it on 4th down. He came from way out on the right side and was able to, Kyler held onto the ball too long, but the speed that he was able to get there was pretty impressive, all things considered, how far he was lined out. And, that sort of inherently ended up in points for the Commanders because then they were able to go down the field, get a field goal before half. But I think that there's a lot of positives to come away with the Commanders, and that is a little bit nerve-wracking for the Cowboys and the Eagles, the Cowboys win their game last Thursday. We talked about this, a number of times. I do think that there were some, concerns that came out of that game. I don't think it was super convincing against a Giants team that I just don't think is all that good. The Eagles as well, they are dealing with some key injuries, so you do have to keep that in mind when you talk about where the Eagles are currently at with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Lane Johnson all out for them. But there still seems to be something going on there with the coaching. I couldn't stand the lack of using Saquon Barkley. You're down your top 2 wide receivers. Why aren't you just putting the ball in the hands of your best players? Saquon had just 2 carries halfway through the second quarter, and at that point, the Eagles are down significantly. What are you doing there? And, ultimately, I just think that there are a lot of flaws with that Eagles team. If they come out and they start reestablishing Barkley, I think that they can get back on track and they can make sure that they aren't behind the sticks, because I don't know if Jalen Hurts is the best downfield passer if he's consistently put in 3rd and longs. But a situation there that I think is correctable, but you also look at the defense that struggled this past week against the Buccaneers. We just talked about Vic Fangio in the last segment. he seems to have this insistence on the Eagles pressing. Like, I think the rate is above 80% that they have their cornerbacks up pressing. I don't know if that's really a style of victory in the modern era, considering how talented a lot of these wide receivers are. They feel like maybe they can get pressure or something, but Baker Mayfield was just able to repeatedly fire the ball in, and there were guys running open for him all day. So just a lot of concerns there. Again, mentioned the Cowboys, Giants, let's be real. They were never really in this conversation for this year, but the NFC East is very much up for grabs. And if I were to bet right now, I still feel like the Eagles are the best team, but I mentioned with the Commanders, and I'm going to pull up their schedule right now as well, they have a very manageable schedule from here on out. And it's about them continuing to have the level of success that we've seen from them up to this point, that they need to continue to keep that momentum going. But we will have to see. But that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, wherever you may be keeping up with us. And we will be back tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern. We will see you then. Take care.
Let's go.